So as many of you guys know, video games have been more popular as technology advances. Thus, games become more complex when there are hundreds of ways to strategize, improve, and play the game. This eventually led to people striving to be the best at the game. Therefore, it led to the idea of esports or multiplayer games played by professional high-level gamers for prizes and money and entertainment. Specifically today, I want to touch on a specific esport called League of Legends. Essentially, it is a 5-man versus 5-man multiplayer game where you attempt to knock down the other player's base. Just like basketball, the game requires a lot of practice, teamwork, skill, dexterity, and strategizing. Therefore, my main proposition is to claim that esports qualifies to be considered a traditional sport, such as basketball, soccer, football, any other physical activity that involves competition for entertainment. And a lot of people don't agree with that because traditionally games have been looked at a different light, such as if you play a week or practice a week of gaming, it's seen differently as you're wasting your time as compared to going to school or to the gym and practicing football or lifting weights. So my first supporting point would be that the supporting staff of esports mirrors the ones in traditional sports. Rick Fox, as many of you basketball players know, former three-time NBA champion, is now the owner of Echo Fox, a League of Legends team created in December of 2015. He took the risk of being the first traditional athlete to jump in the growing and fertile industry of esports. So now with his experience of being in both basketball and League of Legends, he can really tell that there isn't really that much of a difference from being a traditional sport and an esport. In a Rolling Stones article in December of 2016, he states that mastery is established through repetition, focus, and concentration. In other words, it's all in the mind, and that goes for any other sport, whether you're putting a ball through a hoop, hitting a home run across the fence, or getting a kill in League of Legends. Thus, it shows how Rick Fox doesn't believe the prejudice of how e-athletes should be treated less respectfully than traditional athletes. He explains that by being involved in both professional and competitive scenes of League of Legends and basketball, he sees the same amount of work being put in, such as day-long practicing to master the activity. In addition, an article published by ESPN by Rachel Gu, multi-esport organization Team Liquid announced its partnership with Peter Gruber, who is the co-owner of the Golden State Warriors, the LA Football Club, and the Dodgers. Steve Aronset, the current co-owner, states in the Business Wire article that with our new ownership group leading the charge, I'm certain that we can grow from a premier esports team to a powerhouse sports entertainment franchise. Therefore, he wants to put esports out of the niche bubble of being considered esports to the traditional sports category, essentially. And along with the staff who live on the teams, with the team, there are similarly roles that you would see in traditional sports, such as a strategical coach who guides the team like any other coach in sports who do like the actual playing. And in addition, there's the performance coach who monitors the players' nutrition, their fitness, their mental state. And essentially their job is to keep the players at their best mental state. In the article by Slingshot, Team Immortals performance coach Robert Yip explains his role on the team. The players get up at particular times, they stretch and do tailored workouts. Yip is also in charge of the team's diet. The stereotypes about gamers binging on soda, eating chips and Doritos, that's not really what happens in today's esports environment. He tries to provide everyone with fruits, vegetables, make sure they're drinking enough water, make sure that their weight is, correct and everything. And alongside to that, there's Weldon Green, who works also with Immortals. He is a sports psychologist for Team Immortals. He explains that just like in traditional sports, players play differently on stage than in practice. Thus, he works to help calm nerves and remind players to not get too emotionally overwhelmed in any situation. So this is something that has grown in popularity as of late 2016. Teams are getting more serious about playing the game, that they're trying to incorporate measures taken by professional basketball and trying to steer them into esports, therefore trying to mimicking it. Thus, it shows how it's just not about playing the game. There's so much involved, just like in basketball. It involves everything from making sure the players are healthy mentally and physically. So I want to go into my second point, which is the amount of time and effort mimics traditional sports. So team houses was actually adapted from the basketball scene that League of Legends incorporates, where the players live locally to the area of where their team is. Same with, just for the season, same with League of Legends. So this is a full-time job. So just like any other sport, all your attention has to be towards playing the game. Just like I mentioned, the addition of multiple coaches help strategizing like daily, since everyone lives in the same house, while watching films, which came from American football, where teams sit together and review recorded matches. So in an article from Frontiers, Lynette Tippett, a professor from School of Psychology in Auckland, New Zealand, did a study of how gamers are cognitively more trained than just normal players, I guess. So for the task, players had to recall the 4x4 red bricks, and they had to make sure that they can remember the spacing and where it appeared. And it showed that gamers were able to see and remember faster and react faster. And then my third point would be that the structure of the competition follows similarly to the basketball broadcasting system. There's an article by ESPN. They state that the numbers reported by Riot Games, which is the company that made League of Legends, that 27 million people watched the finals in Seoul in 2014. And in Game 7 of 2014 World Series between the San Francisco Giants and the Kansas City Royals, it was only watched by 23.5 million. So therefore showing that esports does have enough viewership to be considered a traditional sport. And also the teams are placed into a season, like I said, where they're playing over 9 weeks, just like basketball, and it's being streamed, and ESPN actually supports it on their website. So in conclusion, esports has all it takes to be considered a traditional sport. It follows similar structures to other sports like basketball and has the viewership to compete with current sports. And also takes a lot of skill and mastery, just like any other sport. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ryan, the proposition's clearly identified at the beginning of the speech, but there's no layout of the contents at the beginning of the speech. You want to give us more of a roadmap. In the body of the speech, I do think that you start signposting points as you get to them, although the first point seems like it's very extensive and there's a lot of information and background that you're giving us. And we're not always getting inferences so much as we're getting descriptions of kind of what goes on in these sorts of sports. So I think there needs to be a little bit more of a declarative statement on this particular point, although the background information is useful. You start making some arguments, I think, on the second and the third point about where you're doing comparisons, where they're not necessarily wasting time, where you make the argument that it's similar to a basketball league or other sports. So I think that you're starting to make some stronger inferences there. I guess the argument seems to be that this is a potentially valuable economic sports entertainment franchise that we're on the cusp of, and I think you've got some good information on that, but you need a little bit more. The number of viewers that has seems to be specified to a particular part of the world, and I'm not exactly sure that translates to the rest of the world. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be classified as a sport, but for example, I'm not sure what the potential for growth is, whether they've reached their capacity in one part of the world. The argument that there's more, for instance, that it'll be more accessible, that people are more likely to watch it in the future, especially if we're talking about the United States. I think that there's information missing here that I think is something that you could probably find and develop an argument on. The stuff about the coaches and living in the house and training together, like I said, that's a little bit of a comparison sort of thing. I'm not sure how important that is to demonstrating your argument that it's a legitimate economic franchise on these kinds of points. It's really more that parallel definition sort of issue. The third point is a little bit more like an economic comparison because you're talking about the number of people watching and how the seasons work and that kind of thing. There are questions about why some sports draw. By the way, you had 27 million viewers online for the show. How many of them were paid admissions, for instance? We need a comparison for that to other sports leagues because I'm sure there's an economic model that generates income from people watching online, but I don't know what it is. And if you're going to argue that it's a viable economic franchise, then we got to have some data about the economics of it, not just the number of viewers. I thought you did a pretty good job citing some examples and factual data in the presentation. I think you need a little bit more statistical information, especially from the economic standpoint. It is a little overtime. I think you're probably aware of that. I thought that you had a clearer sense of the exit when you summarized than you had at the beginning of the speech where you were going, and that helps quite a bit. Give us a kind of a final exit so that we know what the argument is there when you're done. Thank you.